Really, the way this session is designed is I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the Institute for Teaching and really an in-depth look, because I know that's what you're really signed up for, is to find out about the IFT grant program. You can use your Q&A features to kind of post your questions and comments at any time. And then also you'll be asked throughout the webinar to kind of use the raise your hand feature. So you're able to do that. I know if you're joining us by phone, you won't be able to do that. But if you are here and you can use that, it would be appreciated so we can kind of get a read of the audience. So what I hope that you're actually going to come out with is really a basic understanding of the IFT grant application process. How it starts, how it ends, what's needed, what are the processes. Also, we hope to actually have you understand so that you can submit your IFT grant proposal. So I want you to learn how you can do that, and that's the intent of today's webinar. Also, I want you to be familiar with the 7 strength-based matrix factors. That's another intent of the webinar, because that is really going to be the key for you submitting an IFT grant proposal and having that kind of funded. So we're going to go over that as well. And then finally, I just want to make sure that you're familiar with everything that you need to submit online for your IFT grant proposal. So that's really the whole idea of this session today, is kind of give you that basic background and understanding. So can you give me just raise your hand if anyone knows what the acronym IFT stands for? Does anybody know what that is? Linda got it. So anybody else know what IFT stands? Debbie? All right. Got a couple of people that are familiar with the IFT. So we got 2 people. And for those of you that didn't raise your hand or don't know what that is, that's Institute for Teaching. So that's the acronym we use with that. And I kind of use that pretty, frequently. It's just a lot easier for me to say IFT than Institute for Teaching. But yes, so thank you. Those are great. So we had a couple of people, participants that actually know what it is. So take a look at this. This is really, especially now in the whole current, environment, we're really looking at preparing these students for jobs that we don't even know exist yet, and using these technologies that haven't even been invented. To be honest with you, it's just kind of like, wow. And then we don't even know really what we're teaching them to solve these problems that we don't even know exist yet. That they might not even be a problem yet. And that's something that, it's really the whole nowadays, and what we're looking at, it's really something that we have to kind of take it, take a good hard look at to see what we're actually doing. And with the Institute for Teaching, the thing that we're doing with the grants that we're offering is the opportunity to kind of touch on some of those, kind of help prepare students for some of these unknowns and prepare ourselves. So the Institute for Teaching is a 501c3, and it's a nonprofit foundation. And it is part of CTA. It was actually CTA actually founded it in 1967. So it's not anything new. It's been a while, it's been around for quite a while. It's just interesting that a lot of people have not heard of the Institute for Teaching. And that is really, it wasn't until probably about 2008-9 when the volunteer dues contributions, that $20, and that was all when we had that, the big fight going on with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's how this all kind of came about. That dues dollars that we actually had, that was voluntary, you had the opportunity to actually put it into the Institute for Teaching. So the Institute for Teaching grants, those are all funded by your dues dollars. And since then, we actually have that money that comes in every year. And the goal is really to use the funds and have that go back into the classroom. We wanted to get it as close to back to the students and to our members as we can. So this was one of the ways that we were able to do that. Now, the whole premise of what we're doing with IFT is really focusing on strength-based thinking, strength-based teaching, strength-based learning. And I'm going to kind of go over a little bit about what that actually means, because a lot of times people throw that out there. They say, oh, it's all, we're strength-based. But what, really, can you explain that? What does that actually mean? So really the big difference is that comparing the two, if you're looking at a deficit-based thinking, really focusing on what's not working, where you have the strength-based, you're really focusing on what's working. So the idea with strength-based thinking is really to kind of look at finding and identifying those personal strengths, those personal experiences that are positive, and really focusing on helping us grow from that point. So I know a lot of us, have strengths that we can kind of focus on and kind of help grow. That happens with our students as well. So the idea that we're looking at is really how can you identify what those strengths are in your students and how can you help them to build on those strengths. So really looking at that deficit, and it's really unfortunate that now with the whole educational environment, there's so many individuals that are focusing on what we're not doing and how we're not meeting this need and we're not meeting that need. And they're really not looking at all of the things that we are being able to accomplish given the whole environment now, and being able to still reach our students and still try to provide some kind of educational foundation. And this is something that we really need to kind of steer more towards, is really focusing on those things that we have been able to accomplish. So strength-based teaching, and this is really what we're kind of focusing on as far as today with writing this grant. You really want to be able to look at where your students are coming from, because our students come to us from, they have all different types of needs, but they also have all different types of talents and skills that they might not even themselves know that that is one of their talents or one of their skills. And as educators, it's really it's our opportunity to kind of help them identify what those existing skills and strengths are that they come to us with, and help us to build them more into a personal strength. So when they have that talent, and you might have one that's a very talkative individual, a chatterbox, so to speak, and that individual has really highly developed communication skills. So how do we help develop those communication skills so it's something that actually is looked at as a talent or a positive, as a skill, rather than something that's distracting? How do we help that student that is able to capture the attention of other students in the classroom, and I've had this happen where you have one student that can actually try to take your class into another direction because they have that. And a lot of times they're identified as the disruptors, that because they're disrupting learning. But really, in essence, that child has those skills of a real leader. We just have to help them understand how to develop it so that they can move in the right direction and use that as a positive strength or skill. We've been working with Thrively, and you'll notice here on the bottom of the screen, Thrively.com. So if you're interested, we also are doing a webinar series with Thrively, and I think we are on webinar number 4. But that really is something that if you are interested in and having a tool that actually helps to identify what your needs of your students are. And what's wonderful about it is it's it's something that's been existed, but this is something also that you can take advantage of as a member of CTA, and we'd actually pay to have your membership upgraded to the next level, which is the Thrively Classroom Pro. So if you're interested in that, that's something that you can look at if you go to Thrively.com. Also, if you go to our website, you'll be able to sign up if you're interested in anything with Thrively. And I'll go a little bit more over the website in just a moment. So this is where we're looking at really ending up. We want to be able to get a more balanced and accurate view of teaching and learning. So what do we have? And this is nothing new. I'm just kind of reviewing what we already know. Is we know that our students come to us with existing talents and strengths. So we take what they come with, what they come equipped with, and we as educators kind of bring an additional new knowledge and new skills. And that's really the whole idea behind even writing this grant. You're going to focus on what your students already have, what they bring with them, and what do you want to add? What is it that your grant proposal is going to add that you're going to help these students continue to grow and learn? I want you to take a look at this little quote we have from the Resiliency Initiative and read it. And raise your hand if you agree with it, if you think this is something that you believe to be true. If you find that agreement and you can kind of see where this is coming from, then the IFT grant is going to be something that you're not going to struggle with writing or even putting together, because this is really what we're looking at trying to do. We're trying to focus on that reality of what our students can do. So if this, kind of sets well with you, then the IFT grant program is going to be a wonderful way to look at how you can actually bring additional funds into your classroom. So do we have any questions currently that we need to go over at this point? No, I don't see anything coming up. Okay, so let's kind of move on then. Just trying to check for understanding, making sure I have everybody with us and we haven't lost. So strength-based grants. All CTA members are eligible to apply for the IFT grants. And there are basically two types of grants. One of them is the educator grant, and that goes up to $5,000. And the other is the impact grant, and that goes up to $20,000. The $20,000 grant requires 2 or more CTA members. Now, in order to even apply for any of these, because it is dues dollars that we're using, we need to make sure that the individual applying is a CTA member. The application period just opened on December 1st. And the deadline to submit your proposal is going to be midnight, March 31st, 2021. So we've got about 4-month window to actually get these submitted and in there. Keep in mind, though, you do not want to wait till the last minute on March 31st, because if you have any issues or you need any answers that you won't have anyone to reach out to that might be able to help you if you're having trouble, uploading something or not being able to get something in. Because once they close that application window, it's closed. So please make sure that you kind of think ahead with that. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is your local association will serve as the fiscal agent. So we need to make sure that they agree, that they're aware that you're submitting the grant. And with that, that means that there is a form that they will sign. You need to get that form completed. They sign off, and it's not saying that they actually agree with what you're looking at doing. It's just saying that they don't have to agree or disagree. They just need to agree to serve as the fiscal agent. So that's really the big piece, because that also has to be, that's a part of your application. And when you submit your proposal, you're going to have that piece also uploaded. Now the grant selection committee meets. So once we actually have that, you submit March 35th, everybody submits their proposal. Then the grant selection committee, which is made up of currently 5 individuals, and they are classroom teachers, 4 of them. I myself also sit on the IFT grant selection committee board, but there are 4 other educators, and we have them across all disciplines. We have middle school, elementary, high school, and retired at this point that are on the actual IFT grant selection committee board. And what they do is they'll go through those. We have from March 31st, we'll have until about that first week in May to kind of review. So we can actually have that time to read through the actual proposals that have been submitted. Then once that's done, the grant selection committee actually meets. And last year, given the pandemic, we did not meet in person. That was the first year we actually met as a group virtually and actually scored all of the IFT grants. So that was a first for us. It was very interesting. It was definitely, and I know many of you can relate to that, is, as we continue to move forward, finding new creative ways of getting the job done. And that's basically what we were able to do. We also, this last year, we extended the application period, and it went to April 30th. And that was also because that's when, in March is when they really shut everything down and they had us, shelter in place. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to give individuals some additional time to kind of get those in. So last year we did kind of extend that, but the actual deadline for submission is March 31st. So it goes to the board in May. They kind of, the grant selection committee goes through it. Then we kind of send that to the board in June for the approval. So the grant selection committee will kind of have their recommendations. Once that's approved by the IFT board, then all of the grant applications are notified, or applicants, I'm sorry, are notified in July. What that means is whether you were awarded or not awarded, you will be notified. Then the grant funds are distributed to the grant recipients' local association, generally in July or August, when the checks are actually sent out. And then the grant implementation actually starts that following year. Now, some people have actually used that the implementation and started like in the summer. So that's something also, rather than exactly, when their school, because everybody's school starts at a different time. That gives you a little bit of flexibility with that. Now, the IFT grant program is a competitive grant program, and this is now its 11th year. Thus far, we have actually about $4.7 million that you have actually provided to other, educators throughout the state of California. This year was the first year we actually had 110 total applications received. And this was the first year, and it was really interesting. This was a year of a pandemic, and yet this was the year that we provided the most grants. We awarded the most grants this year, 54. So that tells me that as educators, they were still very optimistic and hopeful that things would, kind of have a quicker turnaround, I guess. And it was really interesting to see how, even despite everything that was going on in the world, educators were still focused and determined to really make a difference in the classroom with their students. And this is pretty evident of that, because this was, again, the most awards that we actually were provided this year. We had 110 applications come in. Now, that was not the most that we've had. We've had 159 was the most, but this was the most that we've ever awarded. So anyone who actually submitted a grant this last year, they had about a 49.1, so about 50% chance of actually being funded. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I'm hoping everybody will be able to hear this just fine. This is the Brain Store. This was one of our IFT grants that was for $7,600, 2017-18. And I'm going to go ahead and let them tell you a little bit about it.
The Brain Store is a student-run store at Christopher High School that focuses on assistive technology and school supplies that all of our students need for study skills, for their executive functioning, and just to get their work done. The Spectrum Club was started by students on the autism spectrum. It has grown to include all students with special needs, from learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder to students that general ed students that just want to join us and help us to build a community store to learn the vocational skills that they'll need to transition out of high school. Students picked out all of our fun fidgets like fidget spinners and fidget cubes. Crazy Erin's Thinking Putty. They marketed it to our students, and we explained to the students and the teachers what the benefits of using these fidgets are for everybody in their classes. The benefit for our students is that they're not the only ones using Thinking Putty in their classrooms to help them self-regulate and pay attention and focus in class, because it's available to all of our students, and the teachers are more understanding of the needs of our students, that our students with special needs don't feel singled out because they're using a fidget in class. The benefits of our IFT grant is that it's self-sustaining. So our students order the materials and they work the store, and then the money that we make in our store goes right back into our ASB account so that we can then order more supplies. So when we run out of pencil lead, we just have to order through our ASB account. So this one-time funds is going to be a self-sustaining that we hope to see. Our vision for this grant is for it to continue for as long as these students want to work in the store.
So take a moment and tell me, is there anything that you kind of resonated with you? So just kind of think about that. And I'm going to kind of go over what we had. So for this year, this last 2020-21 school year, these are the ones that you see listed in white are the ones that are pretty normal. Those are the ones, when I say normal, those are things that we generally get every year. Being that we generally get quite a few requests for gardening and aquaponics as far as proposals. Same thing with maker spaces, STEMs, robotic, that's usually another high, need item. Literacy, reading, writing, those are generally the ones that we get a lot of requests for. This year was different, that we actually had six that were really around community service and engagement projects, and also physical education and wellness. So it's really interesting to see how that kind of changed. Also, art, music, performing arts, that was kind of something too that we had a lot more this year than we generally get, and student mentoring and leadership. So it was really interesting to see how things kind of changed with that. Um, and I think, again, a lot of it was with the needs for this school year. And we had no idea back in, March, April, when we were actually when individuals were putting together the proposal, or even us as, looking at, not even imagining that we wouldn't be ready to actually start, with our grants at that point. So really interesting to see how that kind of came to be. So do we have any questions so far regarding anything that you've seen? No questions. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back here because what I want you to do is, you see this website here listed on the bottom, www.cta.org/IFT. If I can have everyone go ahead and take a moment, those of you that are actually at a computer, and kind of put that in, because I want to show you the website and where you can actually pull up some really valuable resources to kind of help you put together your grant proposal. So if you can go ahead, again, it's www.cta.org/IFT. And I'm also going to go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so I can pull that up as well. Has everybody found that? www.cta.org/IFT. Hopefully those of you that did, I am going to come back here and kind of share this with you. So this is what your page should look like. And what you're going to do is scroll down. So the first thing you're going to see is it talks about the teacher-driven change, strength-based models. And then this is where you would actually come to apply for an IFT grant, the webinar, office hours. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that too. We have the webinar office hours coming up. So what that means is, if you wanted some more personal attention, say you have this brilliant idea and this proposal that you're putting together, and you wanted a little bit more direction on that, you could actually sign up for one of our office hours. And we actually have one scheduled for tomorrow from 3:30 to 5. And there are half an hour blocks of time. So you can sign up for one of those. And then myself or someone from the IFT Grant Selection Committee will actually be there. So it's just like drop-in hours. You sign up for, you tell us what which half an hour you're interested in, and we can kind of help you one-on-one with what it is. We thought we would try this. This was something that was suggested to us prior than having the actual proposal submitted, that you might be able to get some help at the front end. So that's where that kind of came from. So as you go down, the history background, what I want you to do is where it says IFT grants, so we're going down here and applying for an IFT grant, and here we go, the 2021 grant recipients. If you click on that, this gives you a list of the 54 applications that were actually submitted and actually funded this year. So take a look at that and see these names. I mean, again, these are things that individual members came up with. On the far right-hand side, you will see the amounts of the actual grants. And these are actually alphabetized by local association. So if you know what your local association is, you can actually just kind of see if you had any that were actually funded. Notice here on the left-hand side, Chico Unified. We had 3 that actually came from Chico Unified Teachers Association. What that means is that, yes, you can have more than one grant funded at your school site. at the same time for the same school year. And generally how that happens is that you have teachers that are working, or it could be other CT members at a school site, and they apply for different grants for different things. So that is something. So yes, since they're done blind and don't really know where the actual grant applications are actually coming, from, or where they're at, that is why that can actually happen. So it's really based on the merit of the grant itself. And when I go through the actual process, you'll be able to see a little bit more about that. But just kind of go through that. That gives you an idea of some of the really great ideas that some of our members have had. The Digger and Diner Club. If you see an R listed to that, what that means is this R up here also is that those particular grants were actually funded for another consecutive year, meaning that they might have started with one grant, and because they were able to grow or expand their program, they were able to apply for a second year of funding. And again, it's competitive, so you're not guaranteed that you're going to get that second year of funding, but it is a possibility. So we've had several grants where they actually started, and with even $5,000, they were able to kind of grow it and include they started, for instance, at a high school, one of our in Fontana, the Grant Academy that they actually had for dance. And they were able to grow it. So the first year was $5,000. Then they were able to ask for a second grant to actually grow it to the middle school. And then by the third grant, they were actually growing the program to the elementary school. And now it's actually written into their district as part of their LCAP. So it looks like we have a raised hand. Nancy. I am assuming she has a question. Is that a question that we have there, or? Let me check. I'm just kind of checking on that to make sure we haven't. And the hand is down. So I guess maybe we don't have that question. Okay, so let's go on to the next. So anyways, you can come back. I just wanted to show you where this was so you would be able to find it later after the fact. So that is that. The other thing I want you to come back and look at is on this website. So if you go ahead and close out of that, and actually, let me see. The other thing is you can actually get on that same, sorry, I'm going to have to go back here real quick. If you go down just a little bit further, you will see the actual summaries. Take a look at those as well, because the summaries give you a descriptor of each one of the grant projects. And that gives you a better idea. Titles kind of there, can be eye-catching, but you really don't get a real gist of what the actual project is. And I'm coming back. I'm going to go ahead and log back in here. So does everybody see those descriptors? They're like paragraphs. Hopefully so. Okay, let's pause share this. Stop share, there we go. So I am going to go ahead and show you one other thing on the website that you will find very useful. Okay, so let me share my screen again. So those of you that weren't able to find it, let me show you where you can actually find it. So on the website, if you go down back where we were out here down on the bottom, and it is right here when you're talking about the grant recipients, the grant summaries. So if you haven't, this is what it kind of looks like. You can actually see the summaries. And it gives you the name of the actual project. It tells you how much they received, the name of the individual that received the funds, and the local association. But this is great because this gives you an example of 54 summaries that were actually approved and funded. So if you're looking at, because you're going to have to put together your own summary, so it's really a good idea to go back through and see what were some of the things that some other individuals actually submitted and were approved for funding. So you'll have time to go back and look at that, but it's really nice. The other thing that you'll find, and going back to the website here, same thing on, oops, went down a little too far. Here, under response or view past recipients, if you go ahead and look at that, for the last 11 years, every one of the IFT grants that were funded, their grant summaries, that introductory paragraph is here. So you'll have about 408 samples to look at to kind of put yours together. And basically it looks and it goes all the way back down to 2010-11. So it starts here at the 20. So just so you know, for reference, this is a good place to kind of go back and look. You'll look at, you can actually see everything that has been funded over the last 11 years. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint and continue. I just really wanted to show you where all of that was, so you'd have an idea. We'll definitely come back to this because I'm going to show you where the sample grant application is, and also this is where you would actually be going to apply for your grant. Buttons here, you're just going to go there. It's going to take you to the actual cyber grant, so you can actually fill out the application. So, and it's very easy to find. We've been working at updating our IFT web page here. So I'm going to go with the new share, go back to our PowerPoint. So do we have any questions? Are we pretty much set with that? Vicky has a hand raised. So I'm assuming, Vicky, do you have a question? Let me go ahead and see. Hey, Vicky, I just unmuted you. Did you have a question or something?
Oh, fantastic. So you can hear me okay? Oops. Can you hear me?
No? Okay. Let's move forward. So the strength-based matrix, this is really important because this is what your entire proposal is going to be based on. There are 7 factors, and the 7 factors are listed here. Student-centered being the center, and this is going to be your first question. How is your proposal actually student-centered? And I know that this is a pretty easy question because everything that we do is really revolves around students. So this is not going to be a difficult question for you to answer. Each one of these 7 factors has a weighted score of about 3. So it's worth about 3 points. So if you were to get a perfect score on your proposal when it's submitted, you would have a score of 21. How we do that is we actually look at the funds that we generally have to actually provide for that particular year. And once we hit that final, as we kind of, based on scores, we kind of do the tally, see where everybody ends up. And then we come up with an actual cutoff score. So the cutoff score was 15.2 this year. So meaning that you could score 15.2 and you were actually going to be able to be funded. And that changes yearly depending on the actual grants, applications, and proposals that we get in. So, and sometimes we have a little higher cutoff score, sometimes it's a little lower. So it just depends on the particular year and what's actually being submitted. Sorry about that. So, are you guys ready to write an IFT grant? Where do you begin? I'm sure everybody's ready, correct? We know that you're interested in writing one. So the first thing we need to do, because now there's 7 factors that you need to address. First of all, you have an introductory paragraph that needs to be submitted. You have 7 factors, which are going to be 7 questions to answer those 7 factors. So where do we begin? Let's start with the do's and don'ts, because a lot of times I get these questions all the time. What can we apply for? And what does a grant cover? What doesn't it cover? So let's see if we can actually get in here very quickly. And it's not going to let me do it that way. So hold on a second. Again, the do's and don'ts are going to be found on our IFT website. So I'm just going to go back there real quick. And show you where you can find that. So here we are back. You guys are going to probably get tired of this IFT website. And let me show you, if you scroll down and applying for an IFT grant, if you go ahead and click on that. Oops, went down a little too far, sorry. Whoa. It's going faster than I wanted. Apply for an IFT grant. And you will see the sample IFT grant application. We're going to look at that as well. And this is the IFT grant applications do's and don'ts. So please, let's take a second and go through these, because you might have some questions. We tried to make this as transparent, as clear as possible. You do need to be an active member of CTA to qualify for the IFT grants. You need to have at least 2 members if you're looking at applying for a grant of $20,000 or more. And that's really done because of sustainability. We look at trying to see if you have a project that's that large that you're going to be using, $20,000, and something were to happen to one of the team members, or if it were to happen to you, then more than likely the project would not be taking place. So if you have more than one team member, it makes the opportunity for it to be sustainable for that next year a little more stronger, gives you a little more bite to that. You need to maintain your CTA active maintenance due status, meaning that you have to maintain your membership status for that entire, time. And the reason that's in there is because we have had where people have actually moved from one site to another and might not have continued with their membership. And unfortunately, if that happens, then we're not able to, again, since they're dues dollars, support that. And it tells you here to kind of review the sample grant application, which we're going to go through. Strength-based matrix, I kind of went through that with you already. Strength-based primers on the same website, same area. But I think the key is going to be determine what your proposal, what it is you want. Do you want to build a new program? Are you looking at expanding or growing an existing program? Because that can happen, but it cannot be something that you're just looking at staffing, that you're looking at, trying to support your proposal by funding a position. Because that's something that's not sustainable. You want to make sure that you actually, look at addressing the needs of diverse learners. How is it going to improve student learning? And it comes back to that strength-based matrix again. You have to address all 7 factors. And if you have in-kind contributions, and in-kind contributions could be anything from maybe support from your parents, that are doing things. It could be support from the community that they're actually providing additional resources. Like I know with a lot of times gardens, I did not realize how expensive it was, to purchase, dirt, soil. Sorry, they call it soil. But really, the fact that that was really, I didn't realize. You think it's plentiful, right? We have soil everywhere. There's dirt everywhere. When you look around, there's dirt, right? Little did I really know that you got to pay for that soil that you're using in your garden beds if you don't have it, accessible there. And if you have, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's that actually provides some of that would be a contribution, an in-kind contribution. Even your district, if your district were to provide you, with something that you're using, like a lot of times when we're doing a lot of projects still, this again, in the past when we would actually have the auditorium or the cafeteria where the district or your school site was allowing you to use these buildings after school. Those would be in-kind contributions. Libraries. And you have to keep in mind, you must alert your local association presidents because they're going to have to sign off on it, so that they'll sign, as being the fiscal agent. So here are the don'ts, very important. No, this is not intended for, purchasing of classroom sets of computer hardware, classroom equipment. So if that's what you're looking at, this is not the type of grant. This isn't the grant that you're looking for. Also, not to supplant, because a lot of times districts are responsible for providing, school equipment, certain technology, that is something, again, if it's supplanting of something that the district should be responsible for doing, where we can't do that either. And it's not designed to be sustainable long-term funding. It's not something that you're thinking of that you can come back to year after year after year. It is competitive. So if you do look at, you do really well the first time and you want to try to expand or grow your grant, that's something that you can do. But again, you're not guaranteed that. And it shouldn't be used, again, I mentioned this before, to hire external, individuals as far as, if you're looking at staffing, but also if you're looking at external professional development, because there might be a project or a program out there that you want to bring to your school site, and they have individuals that provide professional development, and you want to have one of these individuals come to your school site. That's, again, something that this grant is not meant to cover. Because all of these things are not sustainable. Now, if you have something that you would like as far as professional development that you kind of putting together, something that you already have gone and kind of captured that knowledge, and you want to share that with your school, your school staff, then you could be the actual professional development provider to your other colleagues. That would be something that you would be able to do. You're not to cover conferences, travel expenses that relate to conferences. That's, again, they're moving it further and further away from the classroom, and that's not what the intent is. And let me see, we have a question here. Good question. Can a person or a team apply for more than one grant? So in other words, if you're a part of one team and you're applying for a grant, you can have at your school site, 2 different teams applying for 2 different types of grant. But if you're the same individual trying to apply for a grant, you shouldn't be listed in all of the grants. So it shouldn't be a group of people writing 10 grants for their school site, because it's going to be very difficult to actually implement all of that. So you would basically have a group that's actually, writing one particular grant. So you could have more than one grant at your school site involving different individuals. I hope that's clear. Hope I answered that. So anyways, those are some do's and don'ts. Now you can also look at being able to, we've had, again, now this is a little different given the climate, but we were doing, substitutes or you were doing, after school where you could actually do a stipend. So in this environment, given I'm not sure what next year will bring, I'm trying to, stay positive and optimistic and saying, this is all going to be behind us and we're going to be starting something new, but we really don't know what this next year is going to bring. But that is another thing that you can add in as you're looking at stipends for your team members that are actually doing, because we really do value the expertise and the knowledge of our members. And we really do think a lot of times, so many of the things that you do, you already, you volunteer, you put in those extra hours. And if there is a way that we can add that stipend to kind of cover that, at this point, we're not really looking at release time because, a lot of us are still working from home. So there's really not a need for that. And a lot of times you try to kind of squeeze in what you can actually do. But in the past, really, you could either do a substitute release day, you could do a stipend. You can't do both. You can either be released or you can actually get the additional, the stipend for additional hours after. We also were able to cover things like food for meetings. And one year we actually even did immunization for it was a parent institute. And they put that together. And a lot of times the parents aren't allowed to come on campus unless they had their TBs, and the district, wasn't covering them. So they actually had written that piece into their grant. So there's a lot of different things. You can be very creative in what you can actually do. Okay, so let's go back. Oh, we got a question. At CTA at large members apply for an impact grant. So we had a question if CTA at large members could actually apply for an impact. As long as you are a CTA member and you have at least 2 individuals, yes, you can apply for an IFT impact grant. Whether you're a resource teacher, because we have a lot of, it doesn't really, as long as you're a CTA member, it doesn't whether me, because sometimes we have counselors. You might not have a direct charge of so many students. So I know as resource teachers, you probably don't have, again, your classroom that you're kind of assigned. So yes. Oh, got another question. Oh, no, that was it. Answered live. I think that was it. Okay, so let me go back and kind of go on. So now you know what the do's and don'ts are, what you're kind of looking at. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. So the next thing, we already went through the questions. This is the one paragraph. What I had mentioned, this is the actual, these are the questions straight off of the application. So the first thing you're going to have to do is write a 1 paragraph, 100 to 150 word summary of your grant proposal, because that's what we use, as you saw, to actually give that summary. So when someone's looking at the IFT grants, they can kind of breeze through and say, oh, that looks like that would be interesting. That might be something I would be interested in. So that's what that grant proposal, and you have not only all of last year's that were funded, because I showed you where those were at on our website. That would be 54. You have 408 of all of the others that have been approved and funded since the 2010-11 grant cycle. So you've got plenty of those to kind of work with and examples to kind of draw from. Now, the next piece is using the 7 strength-based matrix factors. This is what you're going to answer. These 7 questions that you see here, this is going to be the key. Each one, again, is worth 3 points. The first one, matrix factor 1, student-centered, that is pretty simple. I mean, we haven't had too many people have issues with that because of the fact that they're looking at, we're all about our students and how we can actually help, what can we do to really engage them? And this, how are you going to, your grant proposal going to enrich student creativity, intervention, and resourcefulness? That's pretty straightforward. Now, the second one, work-oriented, describe how your grant proposal will promote student responsibility and self-reliance. So really, how is your proposal really going to help students kind of build that independence. How is that going to really help them build their individual skills? How is that going to help teach them responsibility so that they can learn to rely on themselves? That's what that work oriented. So what is that work going to look like that's going to help them do that? So what is that proposal going to entail? The third matrix, student relations, describe how your grant proposal will expand positive student interdependence. So really, all this is asking is how are you going to get your students to work collaboratively? How are you going to get them to build, those relationships, to work with interdependence, working with other students? Matrix factor 4, you're really looking at how your grant proposal emphasizes strengths over deficits. So really what that is saying is, how are you focusing? How are you going to identify those student strengths? And how are you going to help build those strengths that you help to identify and get students to that next level? Then you have matrix factor 5, school-wide relations. So how are you going to have, again, depending on the environment, but how are you going to have the school community stakeholders? How are you going to, include them? When we're talking about school community stakeholders, we're talking about, what about your other colleagues at your site? How are you going to get that commitment? How are you going to get them engaged? Your administrator, maybe the other faculty that you have, how are you going to get them engaged? Matrix factor number 6 is the school family relationships. And that's really describing how you're going to build that relationship with your families. How are you going to get that parent involvement, engagement? How are you going to involve parent? What piece are they going to be involved with? And what that would look like, a lot of times people say, well, we're high schoolers. We really don't have that, school family relationship. Our parents really aren't that involved. Well, there could be something that you're actually providing where the students maybe they're having, getting that knowledge base and sharing that with their parents. It could be something that the parents are actually coming in and learning that the students are actually teaching them about. So you really, and this might be something, because I know with high school and also with community colleges, it's something that you might not score a 3, but that does not mean, that might not be your strongest area. That does not mean that you have less of a chance of getting funded, because there might be an area that you might not have that is going to be, it's not going to be a 3. But that's still not, given the way that the matrix is actually set up, it's not going to be something that's going to inhibit you from actually getting an IFT grant. The next factor is 7, and that's future oriented. And really, what are these skills, this proposal that you're submitting, how is this going to help students in the future? How is this going to help really boost their hope and optimism for the future? How is this going to help them to really hone in and build skills that they can use in the future? So those are the 7 factors and the questions. On the others, included with that, or you're going to have to submit a table or a chart. And what that table or chart is going to be is going to be your budget. And with that budget, we mean all of the things that you're going to need in order to help carry out your proposal. What is it that you need? Do you need, books? Do you need, any kind of consumable items that you might need? Everything that you are going to need for that and everything that's going to be included in your budget needs to be on this table or chart. And we do prefer that you kind of submit them in a PDF, Excel, or Word. It makes it much easier for us to actually pull those items down and upload them to our database. And then the other item you're going to need is a timeline. And that timeline is basically going to tell us, how do you plan on rolling your project out? How do you plan on implementing your proposal? And again, the best formats are going to be the PDF, Excel, or Word. And don't forget, because it's really a benefit to have in-kind contributions. And again, it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be time. It could be things that the district is already providing you. And then the second piece that you see here is about previous grants. And remember, I mentioned that if you have a grant and you're funded 1 year and you find that you're able to it was such a success and you're wanting to grow it and need additional funding, this is where this piece comes in. And you would have to actually define how your current grant proposal expands or further develops whatever was previously funded, whatever project that you had that you're asking for additional funds. And then it'll ask you if you have any unspent funds, and if so, how much. And then that last piece is going to be the signature page of your local association president. And I have a question here. Is there a typical length for the questions in? That's a good question. So is there a typical length for the answers to the 7 matrix factor questions? Basically, you want to be able to make sure there is no minimum or maximum, but you want to be able to address the question. So a lot of proposals that we've seen that have come in, I mean, we've actually had some proposals that were submitted as long as 35, 40 pages long. I know you're saying, what? But, and unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, those weren't funded. The idea behind it is really to be able to tell your story. Tell us what it is that what's your vision? What is it that you are looking at creating? And that's really the best way to look at it. And you have to keep in mind that you need to have it explained in a way that someone that's reading it, because these grant selection committee members, they're educators as well. You want them to be able to read it and say, I know, I get that. I know exactly what that's going to be, what that's going to look like. I could see that. That's what you're really aiming at trying to do. So there really isn't a minimum, but I would say we've had proposals that have actually been funded that were 4 and 5 pages long, So it really just be concise and really look at telling your story. What is it that you want to kind of accomplish with your proposal? And the next page. So I think we had that question. So I don't know, do we have any other questions? No? Okay, so let's move on. So before we go to what your dreams, do you have a passion project? Kind of think about that. Because if you could, now that you know that this resource is available to you, let me go back to that, kind of switched over before I wanted to do. Think about that. If you could connect your passions and your strength with IFT resources, what would it be that you would be interested in doing? Because that's really the question here. And given the fact that you have so much flexibility in what you're able to, to actually create, and you've seen some of the actual other grant proposals that have been funded. We had everything this last year that went from mechanics, where they actually had an individual that purchased an old car so that the kids could learn how to actually, change tires, check oil pressure. It was amazing. We had one that actually had purchased, I think, a couple of sewing machines to really teach the kids about, they were going to do masks of all things, about contributing to, society and, kind of making a difference. So think about that. As you watch this next video, this was a 2014-15 IFT grant, and it was for $16,800. Amy Conley, they came there. It's a school that was out in Fortuna. It's up, past Reading. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but great. They did a great job. And this was, again, a high school. So I'm going to go ahead and give you with that, leaving with that thought, I want you to take a look and see what they were able to do.
So a few years ago, when I was teaching AP Lit, after the exam, the tradition was that they made a movie. And they enjoyed the movie, and the movie was fun, silly but fun. I decided that it wasn't good enough. This year, all 170 seniors, every single one of them, is creating a project that they think will make the world better. They take what they're passionate about and they mix it up with what they know. Although they're just high school students, they have amazing skills for communication, amazing skills with technology, amazing skills with music, amazing skills with art, and using that to make the world better.
The Change the World project to me is an opportunity for all the seniors at Fortuna High School
to make the world a better place.
Because it gives all students an equal chance
to pursue something we enjoy in the world.
Use the skills they've gained through their high school careers.
Just to get to change what they want to see in the world.
Make a lasting impact on the people around us.
To leave their mark on their community.
To realize the ability that they have to make a difference in the world.
To influence the community in a positive way.
And to make it better.
By simple things such as
doing something good for your community, and not just your community, but hopefully, the world.
And it starts with small steps, but eventually we reach our goal in changing the world.
Our project is to pull the European beach grass, which is invasive, to our county. We decided we wanted to restore our local beaches to our previous ways before we came in and changed it.
My group chose to organize a Yellow Ribbon Week at Fortuna High. We may not be able to change the whole world with one Yellow Ribbon Week, but at least we can bring attention to our small group, maybe just even our school, to help draw attention to that and actually gain a little bit of support for those who need it.
Our Change the World project is putting on a monthly night at the Multi-Generational Center in Fortuna. We targeted 5th through 8th graders for our Change the World project so we can make it so more people get to know each other before they go to high school. So when they get to high school, everybody will know each other and they'll be more connected and they'll have friends from different schools.
My project is that I started a change.org petition.
It's trying to get a composting program for the cafeteria.
For making an exercise video.
We created a poster, books for soldiers.
Clean up the football field and the basketball court.
In the long run, I hope for this almost become a social norm for it to work out well.
We just want to make a safe place for them to come and have some fun.
A safer environment for people to go to.
We want to decrease the amount of obesity in children.
Eventually have F building become a zero net energy building.
Hopefully we'll accomplish, just like making their world better.
If they can't afford a gym membership, they can do these simple 5 exercises at home and they stay fit and active.
We're lucky that our school allows us to do this project, but we're so lucky that we have these kids who want to make the world better and are doing it so darn well. Thank you.
I'm changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
We're changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
We're changing the world.
I'm changing the world.
We're changing the world!
So, do we have any questions at this point? Now that you all have been inspired by these high school students to change the world with your proposal, any questions at this point? Great. So if you'd like any more information about the IFT grants, the strength-based matrix, the strength-based chase movement, any other information that you might need, here's my contact information. Please feel free to send me an email. And there is one other thing I am going to do is share this. I want to show you one other item on our website. And let's see if that works. Besides the do's and don'ts, let me pause this again real quick, sorry. When you look at the end, at the website, the IFT website, let's see. And let me put the website in for you. Let's see what else. I'm going to take a look at the chats. Yes, so if you attended today's webinar, we're going to send you the an actual sample of one of the grant applications that we actually that was submitted, and that's going to be with those 7 questions answered, so that you have an idea. We've had 121, meaning that they got a perfect score over the last 11 years, and that one we will send out to you so you can kind of use that. I don't see any other real questions there. So let me go ahead and okay, I think we actually have, if we have no other questions, please do remember to go back and kind of look at your do's and don'ts. Also, on the website, if you go down, oops, went a little too fast. You have your grant summary, you have also the information for Thrively, if you're interested in that. That's the strength-based assessment. You can actually register for one of the webinars, register for the Classroom Pro if you're interested. That's here as well. And so applying for the IFT grant, the sample grant application is here as well. And that's basically everything that we just went over. This is what the application actually looks like. It gives you actually, when you go in, these are the questions it's going to ask. So this is really something great that you can use because you're going to need the local association name, your district name, all of these items, how much you're actually looking, you know, your project title, the request amount of cash that you're looking for. Keep in mind, it does not have to be $5,000 or $20,000. You saw Amy's and you saw the Brain Store. You need to really request what it is that you're going to need. If it's a $5,000 or less, it's going to be the educator grant. If it's $20,000 or anything more than $5,000 is going to be considered an impact grant. You need to know how many students you foresee participating in your project, and what grade levels you look at actually having impacted. So basically, this is the same. This is just the application, the form, the way it looks. Okay. So I don't see that we have any other questions. I think you have everything else here. We also will have, once we get that, we're hoping to have the actual webinar, so you can come back and look at it later. We'll have that listed probably more than likely here under the IFT grant piece. So if you are looking at coming back, if there's something that you missed or you want to share that with others. So I think we're pretty much done for today. I'm going to put this back up in case you have any questions. Please feel free to contact us. And again, we do have, if you have a grant proposal already in mind and you would like some more one-on-one with one of the grant selection committee members, that's going to be available tomorrow from 3:30 to 5. You can sign up for that as well. If you go to the website and you look under the actual grants where it says webinars and virtual office hours. Anyways, it was great to have you all with us. Thank you very much. And I hope you were able to get everything that you needed out of this webinar.